Welcome to Pikes on Pike, a podcast where the two Pike sisters discuss the works of young adult horror author Christopher Pike.
Okay, great.
And welcome to Pikes on Pike with Brianna Pike.
And Ashley Pike.
Wahoo. That's great.
Yep. It's been a...
Well, I'd say we have our intro nailed.
It's been a hot minute since we've done an episode, so hi, everyone.
Yes. Although, to be fair, the reason being, in the interest of...
Full disclosure.
This book was tough.
This book was a challenge, ladies and gentlemen.
This book was a pretty solid challenge, and it's mostly my fault because I couldn't really be bothered to read it because I got about 5 pages in about a month ago and was like, no, thank you.
Yeah. Well, I read it one night and drank about a half a bottle of wine while I was reading it. So
this was an interesting read, but we'll get right to the good stuff. So, Bree, which edition do you have?
I have the edition that, let's see. I wonder if it...
Which year is it?
That is a fabulous question. Hold on.
We probably should have done this before.
No, it's okay. I got it right here. It is 1986, and it's actually a hardcover from the Greenville Butler County Library that I bought on Amazon.
Dude, I'm gonna one up you here in a second.
Okay,
where mine's from.
It's a old library copy, and it's hilarious because it's got the Greenville, Alabama public library stamps in the front of it, so like it's true to form. But yeah, it's the size of a regular paperback like all the other ones, but it's a hardcover. It's got a hot pink cover on it. Yeah. Well,
I was gonna say, is there any cover art?
There is. So the way that it looks, and we can put a picture of this up on the website, this cover art's pretty fabulous. It's Christopher Pike without the drippy font. This time it's just kind of like a block font in bright yellow, and then it's got a picture of, I assume, the two main characters hanging out in like the in the woods in the forest. Yeah,
you have the one that I have. Yeah. I just have the paperback version of it. Okay, that's the 1997.
Oh, is
edition.
It? Oh, yes. You're right. It is, because there's the 86, and then there's the right underneath it. Yeah, this book is my copy. I don't know about yours. My copy is really beat up.
Oh, so is mine. Mine has one of those. So I have the same exact one. But mine has, first of all, it has the previous owner's last name written on the top part. You know how like we used to do, like, write your name on your book because you don't want someone to steal it. Like someone's going to steal your like $3 paperback that you got at the Scholastic Book Fair.
Right.
But on the cover of mine, it has one of those from the Library of stickers that you used to get at the book fair.
Yeah.
But the idea was that you were supposed to put it on the inside cover of the book, so whoever this belonged to, I won't say the name because I don't want to accidentally embarrass, although I doubt they're listening to this. They tried to scratch off the sticker, did a piss poor job of doing that, and then instead just decided to black out any possible personal information that could have been on said sticker.
Nice.
And on the inside of mine, on the first page, I also have a stamp, but it is not a stamp from a library. It is a disclaimer stamp that the views and statements herein do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the Illinois Violence Prevention Authority.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm guessing that it was probably donated by whoever's name this is to perhaps a shelter.
Weird.
If I had to hazard a guess.
Probably.
I opened it and I went, because I'd never read this book before. I opened it and saw the stamp and went, was this like banned from a library? What am I getting myself into? And then I started reading and went, there's nothing salacious about this at all. And then figured it must have just been donated to the Illinois Violence Prevention Authority.
Yeah. I mean, out of all the books that he's read that we're going to cover in episodes, this one, in terms of like violence and sex and overall just
tame as fuck.
Anything that makes a book somewhat interesting, this is not like, there's none of that. Like the romance in it is pretty low level, and the violence is too. So
that's going to be a recurring theme, Brie, I think, because as I was writing my few notes about this book, there were a lot of things that were just kind of, for lack of a better phrase or word, boring compared to Weekend and Slumber Party.
Yeah.
Just to go back to the covers, for example, normally I have like 5 of these lined up where I'm like, look at this shit.
Right.
So I checked, and there have not been very many paperback or hardback publications of this book, at least not in America.
Yeah.
There have been only, I believe, I didn't write them all down, but I believe there were only 3. Whereas with Slumber Party and Weekend, they were reissued like dozens of times.
Yeah.
And that's not even including the ones that were reissued overseas.
Yeah.
This one only had like 2 or 3. So there's the cover that we're talking about with the 2 characters, whoever, standing in the middle of this jungle with this weird hummingbird butterfly in the background. And then there was the other one from 1986, the mass market paperback, so the first one,
Right.
Which is just very Roddenberry-esque. It's just like it's like the cover of a dark wave album.
Yeah.
It's like them standing, and they're like these spaceship lights,
Yep.
and it's this Christopher Pike at the top. And then the other one that I saw that was like not even really worth mentioning just had like Saturn on it. It just said Christopher Pike, Tachyon Web, and then it was literally just a planet.
When all else
rings.
fails, just put
And I was like-
just put a planet on the flipping cover.
I know. I was kind of like, okay. I mean,
If there was any doubt that this book was rooted in science fiction, then that would
Just in
just in
case,
case
yeah.
you weren't sure. Just in case
Right.
the Tachyon Web was not enough of an indicator, folks.
yes.
Saturn.
And honestly, because neither one of us had read this book before, we did not know what we were getting ourselves
We
into.
did not.
And the actual title offers
Little to no
the
hints.
title and the cover offer little to no information about what this is about.
Purposefully,
but if
probably.
you turn the back, if you turn it over, I will read the back cover blip here. Spring break in the stars. They did it for kicks. 5 young thrill seekers in a stolen spaceship on a joyride to the stars, but one of them had a more dangerous plan: to blast beyond the Tachyon Web, the iron boundary that barred mankind from worlds beyond. Can't help but feel like there's an Iron Curtain reference here, but I digress.
Yeah.
There they found danger, excitement, and heart-stopping adventure, and on a strange alien world, one of them would also find love. So, I mean, that gives you kind of an idea, but still, when I read the back, I was like, so they're going to space.
Right.
Cool.
Pretty much.
And that was kind of where it stopped being cool. Another disclaimer, obviously, we love Christopher Pike, and we appreciate his books, but this one was just not our favorite. So if this just turns into one giant lampoon fest, I'm not sorry, because I didn't like it.
Yeah, I mean, and
But we still like you, Christopher Pike.
I think that probably what's important to say up front as well is that part of the reason that I didn't like this book, other than the fact that it's not very well executed in plot or
Yes.
character development or anything really, is that this is a very non Christopher Pike like Christopher Pike book. You know, it's not like.
Yeah, this is.
If you took his-
this is science fiction.
Yeah.
This is not really a teen, a young adult horror
Right.
book.
If you took his
This
name
is
off
science
this,
fiction.
I don't think you would read it and go, "Oh yeah." Whereas like the other ones, for instance, you know, next time we're gonna look at Last Act, I think it is, and that one is right back to where we. Excuse me, where we left off with Weekend and Slumber Party. So I think that's the other thing about this book is that I read it and I was like, okay, it's kind of a drag. And then also it just seems like it doesn't seem like his style. And part of me wonders if this, because it's so science fiction, is so deeply rooted in science fiction. And like some of his other books like nod towards science fiction and there are like some sci-fi themes going on or whatever. But this one is, I mean, it takes place on a spaceship. It takes place in space. It takes place in a future time where people can gallivant around space like they do the highway system now.
And apparently Mercury is a prison.
And like there are alternate, forms of life and all this kind of stuff. This is all to say that like, I wonder if this was his like foray into something new, like if he tried it was like,
no, I definitely, which is why like I don't want to like shit on it, because I get wanting to branch out and try something new, and you can't fault somebody for wanting to try something new, but at the same time, man, universe building is
tricky business,
is ridiculous, and it's hard, and it is impossible to do in one book in under 300 pages. I'm sorry. Like, it's just not, especially in this realm, like, it's just, it just wasn't, it was kind of doomed from the start. It's not really his fault. That's just a hard thing to do. It was a tall order.
Yeah.
And there were at least some interesting moments that we will discuss. But again, I'm gonna try not to like again shit on it because I feel bad.
Yeah,
it's not like he's fucking listening to this podcast, but I still feel bad even saying it. So,
right. Yeah.
So do you want to jump into our characters here?
Sure.
Do you even remember who they are?
I do. I wrote them down while we were chatting.
Excellent.
And
Pike, professor for the win.
Okay, first of all, it's finals, and second of all, like I would also just like to say to everyone that actually it's not like finals week this week at school, but it will be next week, and I am up to my ass in grading, so my brain is operating at probably about like 50%. So
my brain is operating at 50% more or less all the time. So
if I say something ridiculous, I
forgive us. Forgive us, dear listeners. We're tired. We're also recording this on what day is it? Is it Tuesday?
Tuesday. Yeah.
Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Tuesday night, which is rare, which is not going to be the norm for us, but we were like, we have to fucking record this podcast.
Right. So here we go. Okay, so I'll go through the characters, and if I miss anyone, just holler. So the main characters are Eric, Strem, and can we just pause for a moment? What the?
I knew it. Because I'm so glad that you couldn't even get past the character list, because when I read this book, I said out loud when I got to Strem.
Like, what the hell kind of name is
His
Strem?
name is Strem? In the future, do we name our children after like the noises we make when we hawk something out of our throat?
I mean,
like, really?
I kept reading it as STEM. The first part of the book, and I was like, that's not right. Okay. So Eric and Strem are best friends. Okay. And then Sammy, Cleo, Jeannie? Is that how?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. Vani, she's the alien love interest.
I'm going with Vanny.
Vanny's cool. And then we've got a couple of as per usual with Pike books, that's like the main ensemble. And then we've also got we've got some incidentals. Yeah, we got Strem's uncle, who is how they get the ship. We've got the commander, or I can't remember what the military official at the end, which when we get to the end, we can talk about that whole hot mess of it.
Commander Griffin.
Oh my God, the end of this book, folks.
And Rack.
Yeah, and right.
Who's the head honcho of the alien race that they encounter.
Yeah,
his name is Rack.
And perhaps we should take a moment. So those are all the main characters. And then perhaps we should take a moment too to figure out how we're going to pronounce the name of the alien race, seeing as how they come up a lot.
Oh yeah.
And I have it written out on my paper here, folks. It is spelled Kaulikans. Kalikans is probably right.
Kalikans. Okay, so for the sake of continuity, Kalikan from here on out, and Vanny and Rack.
Okay. I'm writing this out phonetically so that I can remember how to say it. Okay.
I mean.
Okay. Yeah. So that's the
That's our
the
cast of
main
characters,
cast,
folks.
and just like other Pike books, because really, like, the cast of characters is probably the most Pike part about this book. Is they're all like younger, they're all bored, they all are going off. They're all going off on a trip. And yeah, that's pretty much
so
it.
let's actually that's a great jumping off point into how the plot actually takes off. Do you want me to take the first half? Okay,
Sure.
I'll see what I can do here. Okay, so as the book begins, it literally is a group of teenagers who are bored and are looking to do something for spring break. Now, just to kind of drop this into the time frame, this is several hundred years in the future on Earth. Space travel is not only like the norm, but space tourism is like beyond the norm. Like, it's not uncommon for people to have visited all of the planets, which I'm going to get to a serious continuity issue here in a second. But let me
Ashley
get
Pike,
a little further in first.
Science police on the case.
I had a fucking problem with some of this stuff.
Well, it doesn't make any sense, so there's that.
Right. Again, universe building is hard.
It is. Yeah.
Period. Anyway, so this group of kids, it's also narrated from the perspective of Eric, which is, important to know. Eric is kind of a male version of a Mary Sue. He had applied to the patrol, which is like a police force that literally patrols space, and was rejected. So he's feeling pretty butthurt about that. He's also feeling pretty butthurt because he can't get a girlfriend, which, I mean, this is a Christopher Pike book. Everyone's butthurt because nobody's got anybody.
I just like how you keep using the term butthurt and an ambulance just went by.
We aim for quality, people.
Okay.
Quality. So Strem and Eric are meeting up, and Eric's like, "Oh, I want to do something for spring break," and Strem's like, "I've got a great idea. We're gonna take my merchant uncle's space bus
Excalibur
to the Excalibur, and we are going to take it and go somewhere cool."
Yeah.
Now, because everyone's feeling very blasé because they've all apparently visited the planets before, they decide that Strem says, "Oh, we're going to go to this planet kind of far away, but it's within the jurisdiction of the patrol," which leads me to the Tachyon Web, which is a series of satellites that basically surround Earth and other areas to prevent people from going outside it because they don't want people just going willy-nilly off in space. Which, I mean, if I were a government official in future Earth and space tourism was a big thing, I also wouldn't want every, Joe Blow just going off into space saying they're a human and here's my planet and then acting like an asshole.
Right. Right, yeah.
In front of foreign aliens.
Right.
So,
Right.
So anyway, they decide they're going to go to this planet, and Strem has this plan. He's going to, they're going to pretend that they're merchants because, they're teenagers. They're not really like captains of a starship, so they're not really supposed to be doing this. So, but that's the plan.
Right.
So flash forward, they've got the Excalibur. We kind of gloss over how Strem is able to talk his uncle into letting him borrow his starship.
Something about like a court date and a previous infraction.
Uncle what's his face had to go to traffic court, and so Strem is just borrowing the car for the day, I guess. So they're on their way. They get past the patrol checkpoint, which is like the equivalent of going through customs in space. Couple of other random things happen. Eric is still kind of butthurt because he doesn't have a girlfriend, whatever. And they find out that... Wait, is this the point where they're having problems with the ship? No, sorry, that's right. So to make a long story short, it turns out that Strem's plan all along was to hyper jump across the Tachyon Web to go see what was on the other side. Now, nobody else knew about this, I think, except Sammy. And we didn't mention Sammy in the cast of characters,
Yes, we
did
did.
we?
Yes, we did. I mentioned
We did?
it.
Okay.
Yeah. He's the genius. He's like the super nerd who makes the hologram that allows them to get through customs.
That's right. So Sammy, by the way, in the description in the book, is made to sound like he looks like Riff Raff from Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah, he does.
Tall, lanky, stooped over, and I'm sitting here like it's forming in my head, and I was like, this guy apparently looks like Riff Raff. That's a shame.
Yeah.
So anyway, so they jump across the Tachyon Web. They come out on the other side, basically face to face with a supernova,
Which they knew was there because
because they wanted to see it.
Yeah.
Which I was kind of like, that's kind of cool, but at the same time, you know, stupid. One of the many scientific problems with this book. I'm just gonna save them all for the end.
That's fine.
But anyway, so they basically come face to face with a nova, and the ship obviously is not designed to, you know, face a blazing nova.
Right.
And they start to overheat. They're having all these technical issues. When things finally get solved, they find out that they are essentially out of coolant, and that without the coolant, the next time they try to use the hyperdrive, which they'll have to use soon because they fucking want to go home, they need to find some. They need to find some coolant. Which leads to the second half of the book, the larger half of the book, where they decide to break into an alien spaceship. By the way, we've apparently been space tourists for a while on Future Earth, but our minds are still blown when we encounter aliens.
Well,
No, Bree. I'm like, they knew they were out there.
Yeah, but they knew.
They did.
Yeah.
They mentioned in the book that there was speculation that the reason the Tachyon Web was formed was because the government was trying to hide the fact that Earth was at war with a outside force, which turned out to not be true, but it's still an acknowledgement of aliens. So when they're like, oh my God, aliens, I was like, you fucking knew about the aliens, but whatever. Yeah. Now we're going to, not only did we just find out about the aliens, but we go from that jump to, let's fucking rob them.
Yeah.
And take their coolant.
Yeah.
Which leads to lots of fuckery. So you can take it from here.
Okay. Can we just go back for a minute though? And I would just like to say that the part where they decide that so this particular alien race has a very specific look to them.
Oh yeah, let's talk about what they're going to end up looking like.
So this group of teenagers is like, well, we have to disguise ourselves so that we look similar to them, so that when we go on their ship, they do not, immediately go, holy shit, what are these, people or these things doing on our ship? And so they get dressed up. But what I love about this is that, like, Cleo, who is Sammy's girlfriend, I believe, yes, is apparently like a punk rocker, and so she has like all this stage makeup and stuff that she travels with because she like performs on different planets and stuff. And so she just happens to have not only like gold makeup, because from my understanding, the basic kind of physical appearance of this the Kalakians, is gold skin, white hair, and sort of these, I think it's green eyes or something.
Yeah, the guy that they see has like curly white hair.
Yeah. And
like gold skin and a smooth face.
Yeah. Like,
and you know where my mind went, Brie? Mugatu from Zoolander.
Yeah, that's true.
I was like, so these and then when they get dressed up to disguise themselves, I definitely thought Mugatu.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely that. So I just think it's hilarious as just a small point. There are many things about this book that are problematic, and not just the science. But I find that, like, it's just amazing that Cleo's like, here, I have all this stuff to, like, magically transform, like, two, fairly large dudes. Because, like, when they go, because Eric and Strem are the ones who go onto the ship, because Strem is like, this is my big adventure. And I would also like to point out that at no point has Strem, I think at this stage in the book, apologized for A, putting his friends' lives in danger, and B, like, they're gonna
and lying,
right?
Yeah.
Like, and they're gonna.
Strem's an asshole.
He really is. Which I'm gonna get to another big reason why he's an asshole in just a minute. But like, the thing I think is amazing is that a lot of the quote unquote asshole types in Pike's books, a lot of times have some like at least somewhat redeeming feature. Like I'm thinking about Lena from Weekend, and like by the time you get to the end of that book, you're like, okay, Lena had her reasons. I mean, she wasn't perfect, but whatevs. Strem's a freaking piece of shit the entire way through.
Yeah, Strem's just, he's just a piece of shit.
Just
he serves
selfish.
no purpose except to just get them into this mess and then be pretty useless at trying to find a way out.
And he makes the mess like 60 times worse by the time he's done with it. I mean, it's just insane. Yeah. Anyway.
He's just an idiot.
So to just get through the remainder of the plot. And I'm going to say that I'm going to stop before we get to the end, because the end of this book is the biggest cluster that I have ever, like,
And by cluster, we mean kind of plot cluster.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I'm still not entirely sure what happened. But
do you think maybe Pike started writing this and ran out of time?
I don't know, man.
I mean, it's possible, because if he was under contract with like his publishing house and he had to put out... Because this was like his second book he put out in 1986?
Yeah, and it's 211
Maybe he was under contract and ran out of time.
I don't know, man, but it is.
This is all of this commentary is just a testament to the shit show within.
It is. Okay, so they get dressed up. Yay, whatever. They leave the two girls and Sammy on the ship. Strem and Eric go on to the ship. And they start putzing around. And Eric is immediately like... so immediately so that it's kind of laughable, is immediately enamored with this entire race of aliens. Like, he just thinks that they're, like, amazing. Like, he's on the ship for, like, 35 seconds, and he's like, these people are superior to us in every way. And I'm like, okay, whatever, dude. And Strem is just like, we need the coolant, we need the coolant, we need the coolant. So you're already getting this set up between these two characters where you know there's going to be a problem, because Eric's just, like, idealized the entire thing and forgotten that, like, their friends are on a ship that could potentially blow up at any minute. And Strem is just, like, ready to go in there, guns blazing. He's like a cowboy. So it's just a mess. So they go in there and they find themselves in, like, a food court area. And it's a massive crowd, because all of these people on the ship, it's probably worth mentioning that the reason that I have to keep looking at my notes, the Kolikians are on this ship is because they had to leave their home planet because it got blown up.
Yeah, it got absorbed by the Nova.
Right. So they're on the run. I mean, they're looking for a new home.
They're on their way to like another planet as refugees, basically. Like, everyone's like, it's important mentioning, like, everyone's looking kind of rough on this ship. Like, everyone's okay, but like, they're obviously like, like, the clothes are a little drab. Everyone's a little bit bummed out, and it becomes apparent pretty quickly that the reason is because they're refugees, essentially, and they're trying to get to this other planet. It's taking them a long time to get there, also because
their technology
is not as advanced as ours. They don't have a gravitron drive.
Right.
They're basically on sailboats while we're apparently using yachts.
Right.
So
and Eric empathizes with this entire plight a lot. Like, even before he meets Vanny, who's his love interest, like, he just thinks this whole thing is,
alien love.
Right. So they get to the food court. They get kind of swept up in the crowd, because the crowd is moving kind of in lines and so forth. And so they kind of just roll with it so that they don't stick out. And inevitably, they end up running into Vanny. And of course, the first thing here is that they don't share language. And so,
well, why would they?
Right, obviously. Now, they have some kind of little, like, radio microphone device that both Strem and Eric have, where Sammy is talking to them, and he's able to, like, translate, and also he can track them, like, where they are, to help them kind of orient themselves. And so they end up being able to communicate with her a little bit, and I think it's kind of implied that from the beginning she realizes that they're not exactly the norm, because they make a few blunders. Like, they say some things that just in her world wouldn't make any sense, but whatever. And so eventually what ends up happening is and I'm skipping along quite a bit here, but they convince her to show them where the coolant is kept. And well,
as if she's gonna know,
right?
Like this, like the average person
She's
on the ship.
also like a
where's the ship coolant?
Right.
Oh, sure, let me take you there. I would be like, what the fuck do you mean?
Right, and she's also like a farmer. I mean, everyone on this ship, as we come to find out, and this is nothing new either, has a job, right? And she's like agriculture. Like she doesn't have anything to do with sort of the fuel, but
she's like farming her little plants,
right? And like the forest and all this good stuff. But anyhow, so they figure out where the coolant is via her, and they go there one time, and they realize like she shows them under the guise, I think, of like giving them a tour. And they go there and they realize that the coolant is attached to some sort of facility that basically has an alarm on it. So it's not going to be as simple as just like going in there and getting it. Like they're going to have, and this sets up kind of bringing us into kind of the last, I guess, like movement of the book. This sets up a problem because Strem is just like, we should just go in there and take it. And Eric's like, I love all these aliens. I don't want to hurt Vanny. I love her, even though I've known her for like 15 seconds. And so it's like a whole thing.
Teenagers.
Right.
Because lest we forget, these are teenagers.
They are, folks.
They may be space hijackers now.
Right.
But they're still teenagers.
So Eric and Vanny go off and like tour the forest, and Strem is left to his own devices, and some messy stuff occurs. And eventually what ends up happening is Sammy is the only one left on the Excalibur, and the two girls come on to the ship too. So basically and Strem and the two girls go back to where they're holding the fuel and essentially attempt to take it by force. Unbeknownst to them, Eric has convinced Vanny to go and get fuel and meet him, like rendezvous with him in another part of the ship so he can take the fuel and take it to Excalibur, the coolant. I'm sorry, I keep calling it fuel, same difference. The stuff that they need to go home. And so no one knows what's going on, and there's all this miscommunication. And so essentially what ends up happening is Cleo, Jeannie, and Strem end up being, and I'm using this word loosely, end up being taken as hostages. And Eric and Vanny and Sammy end up back on the Excalibur, just kind of like chilling in space. And they're all like communicating with, what was the head guy's name?
It's like a translating helmet or something. And so there's a translator. Don't worry, they can talk.
So they talk to one another, and they eventually try and start to come to some sort of like, some sort of agreement. And Eric doesn't want this. I love this too. Like they're negotiating the lives of their friends with an alien race, and Eric is like, I don't want this to jeopardize my relationship with Vanny. And I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Teenagers,
right? And so eventually, towards the end of the book, the patrol, as Ash mentioned in the beginning of the book, they come onto the scene, and it becomes very apparent very quickly that they've known all about the Kalikians for a while. Like they've known that not just that there was like speculation of aliens, but they have actually physically known about this particular group, the blowing up of their planet, the nova, or the absorption.
They knew about them, and they knew about the fact that the nova had engulfed their planet.
So the commander, what was the commander's name?
Griffin?
Commander Griffith. Griffin. Sorry.
Wait, maybe it is Griffith. Hang on. Son of a bitch. It's Griffin.
Okay. So Commander Griffin, he and Eric sort of become like this duo to try and figure out what to do with, how to negotiate this whole situation. And at the end of the book, it winds up sort of Griffin.
Well, no, you missed a key part where they basically the patrol wants the Excalibur.
Oh yeah.
And they are threatening the Kalikians by saying for every half hour that passes that you don't turn over the Excalibur, we will blow up one of your ships.
Right.
Now they do blow up one of them.
They do,
but it's like a
grain or like
it's like a free floating plant.
Yeah.
So there's nobody on it.
It's
It's like a power plant or something. So there's nobody ends up getting hurt. But yeah, they like really want the Excalibur back because they want to take these kids in, and they're kind of flexing their muscle at the Kalikians.
Right.
So anyway.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And so some things happen, and people are upset and disillusioned or whatever. And so Rack and Eric end up going on to the patrol ship and meeting with Griffin. And Griffin turns out to not be as much of a kind of son of a bitch as he appears to be initially. Sorry.
Well, he is still a pretty big son of a bitch.
He is, but he kind of we begin to sort of understand his motivation a little bit more because he tells them,
if that's what you want to call it.
he tells them the story about his kid. And I'm trying to find it.
His kid they're on a fishing trip or something, or sailing trip in Australia.
Yeah.
This backstory is lame.
Ridiculous.
He's on a sailing trip with his son in Australia, and his son drowns. Mm-hmm. So ever since then, Commander Griffin has hated inferior technology.
Yeah.
Because it caused his son to drown. Now, how does this relate to the current scenario, you may ask? Well, he's looking down his, what I imagine to be hook nose at the Kalikans because they do not possess the higher technology that the Earthlings do to fly around in space. So he's basically judging them for not. It's like judging poor people for being poor.
Yeah.
It's just stupid.
It is, although I'm just trying to find. Yeah, he talks about the fleet being slow and vulnerable, which we all know. But then he gives Rack the plans so that they can.
Well, the end result is that he decides that it's not worth it to blow them up.
No, he says instructions on how to build the Gravitron and hyperdrives, Eric heard himself say. This is on page 200 if anyone ever cares to read this book. Detailed instructions, Griffin corrected. As I watched you through the years, I thought, if I had the chance, what would I tell you? He tapped the chip. This is everything. He handed it to Rack. The first counselor slipped in his pocket beneath the folds of his gown. He was not surprised, but still deeply touched. So it seems like Griffin has been... I mean, not only has the patrol been aware of these people's plight, because also let's remember that this is space. So, like, they've been out there, floating around. Like, it's taken them, it's going to take them a long time to get to this new planet, which is part of the problem.
Well, and it was going to take them a long time to get to this new planet anyway with their inferior technology.
Right.
And also took them a long time to evacuate because they didn't have the technology. Yeah.
And he says later on, I had my orders. I never disobeyed an order. Because Eric asks him why they waited until after the Kolikians' planet Kashi was destroyed. And he says, they are not the heartless savages you imagine. They are just cautious people. They wanted to wait and see. Then the sun exploded and I saw more than I wanted to see. Still, I continued to wait. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like they were testing them to see if they were worthy, which is kind of awful, but that's sort of how it goes. And then they get the information, and then ultimately, just to kind of wrap this up, Rack goes back to his ship, and the kids are released, basically, and Eric stays with Vanny on the ship. And, is seemingly going to just be part of the...
Yeah, he's going to be an alien now.
Right. And he seems...
Bye, Mom and Dad. Left for spring break, never coming back. Gonna be an alien.
He seems to have some misgivings. I mean,
the whole thing is fucked. The whole thing is fucked. I got to the end of this book and I was just like, okay. So we caused an intergalactic incident because we just wanted to be space tourists. We almost get an entire race of people blown up, and now I'm just gonna go be an alien now.
Yeah. I also like how the last 4 or 5 pages of this book are very poignant in the fact that, as you mentioned, he's like, I'll never see my family again. He's going to be out there in freaking space, right?
Yeah, but at least I got my girl.
Well, and then it says, here, on page 210, Eric, because there's this whole big note, he gave a note to someone to give a note. And of course it's a passing of notes because, again, teenagers.
It was a secret note that he gave to Vanny to give to Strem, and then Strem writes something back, gives it to Vanny to give to Eric.
Right. And so, there's all this poignant stuff about like I'll never go home again, and I'll never like see my parents again, and all this BS. And then he says, she gives him the note and he reads it, and then Vanny says, "Good news." And Eric says, "Vanny, once we get settled on our new world, how would a trip sound? Is this Strem's idea? Sort of. To where?" He looked out the window at the soft glowing body of the Milky Way. "I've always wanted to see the center of the galaxy. So have I. That'll be our first stop." And then they talk about, like, just further down, just to finish out how ridiculous this is. He's looking out, the telescope to see, the patrol and Excalibur leave, and it says this time he experienced no stab of loneliness, nor did he even feel the need to say goodbye. He would see his friends again. It was written in the stars. And I'm just like, what? So, like, it's all poignant about it's all poignant about how, like, I'm never gonna see any of these people again. JK. I'm
never gonna see any of these people again, but at least I've got my alien girlfriend.
Except when I do see them again.
God damn it. I seriously have never been more irritated when I got to the end of the book.
We haven't even, you know what?
And I mean, we knew what we were signing up for when we took on this mission to read every single one of these books and do a podcast, but like I never in my life have been so irritated when I got to the end of a book. And I have read some infuriating shit.
Dude. And the thing that's sad, guys, listening, is that, like, we haven't even talked about the characterization of some of these people, which I feel like, Vanny...
There is not enough fucking time to talk about all of these people.
Like, we just basically gave you the run-out through of the plot, and if you're listening to our, summary, thinking, well, maybe it just doesn't make sense because they're kind of flipping through it because they didn't like this book. Let me assure you.
I don't blame you.
Right. Let me assure you, folks, though, it is not because we are summarizing it. I love you, Christopher Pike, all the way, but I'm serious when I say that there are parts of this book that make no damn sense at all.
Can we please talk about the science? Because here's the thing. So science fiction has been big for a while and was certainly still very big in the 80s. We're talking, this was published in 1986, so this is like post first generation of Star Trek. This is post Alien. This is post fucking Scanners, probably. Oh, yeah. I don't know. Like it's a lot of science fiction has come before this. I'm pretty sure L. Ron Hubbard was writing around this time also. Speaking of fuck jobs, anyway.
Let's not bring that into it. Yeah.
Anywho, but as we discussed earlier, creating a universe is very difficult, and it is especially difficult when you give yourself very limited parameters to do so. And sometimes when you do that, you end up inadvertently creating a lot of holes in your universe, which I am about to pull at like a loose thread in a cashmere sweater. So, first of all, space tourism. Let's talk. So apparently, in this universe where it's several hundred years in the future from 1986 anyway.
Yeah.
It is not unheard of for people to have visited all the planets. In fact, Eric makes the remark that he has been to all the planets, and I read that and I went, "Wait a minute.
Yeah.
All the planets? Really? Really? All of them?" Because I wrote this down because I was so outraged. Because I was like, this doesn't sound right. And then I looked it up and I was like, I was right. And, when I'm right, I feel vindicated and have to tell everybody. So even Jupiter, he says Jupiter by name, that he had even been to Jupiter.
Yeah.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, I know that probably a lot of you watch Bill Nye the Science Guy.
I love Bill Nye. New show, folks. You should watch it on Netflix.
New show. The new show's good. What do we know about Jupiter? Jupiter is a gaseous giant.
Sure is.
Now, what does that mean? That means there's no fucking solid surface to stand on. A gaseous giant means there is literally nowhere to stand. There is no crust to stand on. It is basically a swirling vortex of shit winds just blowing at fucking apparently the strength of a Category 5 hurricane. So if you can imagine standing on the ocean during a Category 5 hurricane and you can't breathe.
Yeah.
And also, you know, the surface pressure is 1,000 times stronger than Earth, so you're dead because you've been crushed. That's what it would be like on Jupiter. And I remember I got to that point in the book and I had to put it down and I was like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. And my boyfriend Nick was like, what's wrong? And I told him and he was like, but it's fiction. And I was like, I know, but science. And he went, but it's fiction. And I was like, but fiction and science can work together.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Like, this is kind of what I'm always telling my students. There's suspension of disbelief, and then there's like, you know, just...
And then there's just, like, the blatant unlikely.
Yeah, I mean...
Like, yeah, they could have been floating in orbit around Jupiter, but then you haven't been to Jupiter, you've been floating in orbit around Jupiter.
I mean, you have to... I think here's the problem. If you are going to introduce that as an element into your narrative, then you have to be responsible for the fact that there are some things that you're just going to have to, like... you're going to have to make work within that narrative. And I think the thing that I find even more disheartening, other than the fact that it literally doesn't work in any way, shape, or form, is that I don't think all of that stuff to me, like all of that stuff, seems to be secondary. Like, I don't think
it absolutely
is.
Is.
And I think there's something to maybe the fact that he, like, ran out of time. Because it's like... he started building this whole thing, and then I think it got, you know, maybe bigger than he could handle. And so he was like, okay, well, you know, I mean, it doesn't, if you're going to go there, it's like you got to go all in. And if you're not, then fine, but don't, I don't know. Yeah, it's just.
Not. It was a tall order for a short YA horror book, which is not even a horror book. There was nothing horrifying about the book except the plot.
Yeah, but I mean, there's no, like, and that's the other thing. Like, it's interesting because while you were talking, I was just looking at, some things with the science, and I was looking at reviews on Amazon. But I have to tell you that we may get some hate mail about this one because people love this book.
I was actually, so I got to the end and I was like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. And I went, you know what? I wonder how it stacked up in the reviews. And I couldn't find any, like, reviews from back in the day. However, on Goodreads, of 771 ratings, 35% of all of the ratings gave the book a 3 out of 5. Yeah. Which isn't perfect.
No,
but it's certainly better than what I would have given it.
I would give it. I think the other thing that fascinates me about this too is that, like, I'm just scrolling through some of the Amazon ones, and, like, these are people who've read a lot of Pike, and as have I. And, like, I have to tell you guys, this is the second time I'm going to mention the next book because I generally like the next book. Like, Last Act is an enjoyable book. Like, there are problems with it, but it's a fun read, and it has all the classic makings of what we typically associate with Pike. And I don't find it, like, because this is missing the horror and the intrigue and some of the, I mean, maybe this makes me sound like a creeper, but I don't really care. Some of the violence and the angst and that kind of stuff, like, it just seems very unsatisfying. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Well, and I mean, well, like we just said, this isn't a horror
No,
book.
It's not.
What we were looking for was, you know, the YA horror. And, you know, we took on this mission.
Yeah. And
we knew that he'd written some science fiction, but we weren't really sure how much. And I honestly, beyond this, I don't know how much more science fiction there is. I'm sure we'll find out. But it is unsatisfying. But maybe that's also our fault because we went in thinking that this was probably just going to be... the same, I guess, basically like the same thing over and over again. So that's probably our fault. But as someone who enjoys science fiction,
I do too.
I was kind of like, okay, this just isn't working. And I mean, even the stupid shit, like, okay, so you've got it bad for Vanny, but she's an alien. How do you know she doesn't reproduce by telepathy?
Yeah, the whole
thing.
How
do you know?
I know.
Like, this whole thing, like, oh, you're going to get into a relationship with this girl that you know
zip
absolutely nothing. Yeah. Like, actual nothing about.
Yeah.
And you're going to abandon your family on Earth. Oh, also, this is me being nitpicky and also just bitch alert. when Pike mentions that English is the only language spoken on Earth in their time, and I went, LOL, he obviously didn't know about China as a world power in 1986.
I know. I was kind of like, okay. Well, and I would also just like to say, like, I am a huge fan of sci-fi. I mean, like, and I've read a fair amount of sci-fi. I mean, this is not about, like, me being a genre snob. I just don't think, and I do think that it's a good point. I think part of it has to do with the length. I mean, I think he was just trying to get too much in there. And I think it's telling that if you look at, like, where we're going after this one, that I think he found, and it would make sense that, like, if this is the third book, you know, he gets 2 out, they're fairly well received, people like them, etc., and then he's like, well, if I'm going to try something new, I'm going to try it now.
Right.
And so,
right. I mean, you gotta give him a pat on the back for that. Like I said, universe building is hard, and this was a tall order, and he did it for better or for worse.
And then I think we see a return to kind of what we would typically expect, and what I find personally is the stronger stuff. In the next, I think, I don't know, like 15 books. I mean, like, I was looking ahead at, like, what we're coming up on, and I've read a lot of these already. Like, I don't think we hit anything new for me for, like, another, I don't know. It's going to be a while, which is fine. And I don't have a problem with that. And I have a lot of fond memories of reading these books because I enjoyed them. And they're not anything like, I'm not trying to make them into fine literature or anything. But I feel like the premise of this book kind of got away from it because even the character, I know I keep coming back to this, everyone, I'm sorry. I'm a big character person. Like, even the characters in this book, like, you know, there are problems with the characters in Slumber Party. Don't get me wrong. There were problems with the characters in Weekend. But at least
But there's virtually no character development in this book.
At least he attempted to make them three-dimensional.
I think he was attempting to make a plot-driven story, which, good on you, dude.
Sure.
But it just didn't
work. Yeah.
It just didn't. Well, and it doesn't work in such a short... It doesn't work when you're trying to build a universe, a scenario inside of a fictional universe in under 300 pages in one book.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even really about it being under 300 pages in just one book.
Yeah.
And like, there's, you know, at least some character development in the other books. Like, you know, you have your accessory characters like Bert for Weekend.
Where the hell is Bert?
Right. It's like, that should have been the subtitle of that book is Weekend, in parentheses, where the hell is Bert?
I love it. Yeah.
But yeah, there's no character development. Like, honestly, like, a lot of the shit that's going through Eric's internal monologue in this book, he sounds like a nice guy.
Yeah.
Like, he sounds like he might say milady, might wear a fedora, might get mad when she says no. And he kind of does, because they don't call him. Those 2 girls that he mentioned at the beginning of the book. Yeah. And he gets all shitty because they don't call him back. And I was like, dude, maybe they were not into you.
Well,
fucking cool it.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about it that's telling is, like, I got to the end of this book where, again, you know, I was talking about how it was, like, all poignant and shit, how he's not going to be able to go back home. And, like, I didn't give a crap.
I know.
I was like, leave him out there, man.
Am I supposed to feel any sort of way? Yeah. Because I don't.
I didn't care about any of the kids.
Well, and let's not forget about the fact that Jeannie and Cleo
forget it.
They might as well have not even
been there. I know, forget it. I mean, like, sheer plot devices.
Sammy, at least, like, you know, he was the brains of the group, and he, you know, had intelligent things to say,
and got things done.
But Cleo and Jeannie, I was kind of like, you don't need to be here. Like, I got to the end, and I was just like, there was an actual part in the story actually where, like, things are starting to go to hell, like, they've been found out, and I literally thought to myself, well, not literally, actually, I hate it when people do that, and I do it all the time. Anyway, where I actually thought to myself, I totally forgot about Jeannie and Cleo. I totally forgot that they were even on this fucking spaceship.
Well, there are large swaths of this book where they don't say Jack. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like,
they're just not important.
The entire, like, middle of this book, when Strem and Eric are gallivanting around the ship, like, they're not even there. Sammy talks to him via like the little intercom / radio / whatever in their ears, and girls don't say anything. So yeah, I mean,
and they're just
ridiculous.
sitting on the other side of the screen, appropriately freaked out, and that's pretty much
I
it.
will say this though, this was one I wrote down, no joke everyone, probably like 4 things about this book, full disclosure, but one of the things that I did write down was that and I just thought I'd mention this because we can talk about this as we go through some of the other books. I believe that this is the last time we're going to get, maybe the first and last time, we're going to get a male point of view being the only narrator in for a while. Because the next couple, again, I was flipping through, I was looking at what we got coming up. They're all women. And we came from, I mean, Weekend was dual. Because it was Shani or Shani or whatever, and Park. But Laura was,
which I liked.
I did too.
I kind of liked that.
And we're going to get more of that too, but we're done with the only the dudes. Because he doesn't do that again for a while. And I also kind of wondered
which
about
I'm
that.
fine with. If all the dudes that he's going to write are like Eric, I'm fine with never seeing Eric again. Enjoy space. Bye.
Bye. Peace out, dude. Laters.
God, seriously.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, it's, although, actually, you know what, one interesting point that I wanted to bring up, because we had talked about how this this book step is so different from the other ones. Now, granted, this is the third, but it's still different than the first two. There's no internal group treachery.
No.
I was like, I was waiting for the twist.
Yep, no subterfuge.
I was waiting.
Nope, none of it.
And I mean, we got a twist in that we got some random character coming in and being like,
"Yep,
I have the power to totally resolve this entire situation."
Yep.
But no treachery from within the ensemble group.
No backstabbing.
And I went, and I was just like, this is kind of cheap. I kind of wanted that. I had expected it. I mean, one thing, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, one of the best parts about reading these books is once you get the character development and then things start to go to shit, trying to figure out who it is.
Oh, and I will tell you, if you like that shit, just you wait, folks. Next time.
I can't wait.
Next time.
I can't fucking wait.
Next
but yeah, there isn't any of that in this book. I know. It was unsatisfying.
Yeah, even in the, I mean, folks, we can't even do a flippin' angst alert, really, because
the only angst alert we can do is that Eric would probably be a men's rights activist in current times.
Yeah, exactly.
He's upset because girls don't like him, but he blames them.
So basically he sucks. So yeah.
And then he goes after an alien girl that doesn't know any better because she doesn't know what humans are really like. Oh, bless her.
Bless her. I know. Right. So we can't even, it's just, guys, it might not be a terrible one to skip. That's all we're saying. Yeah, love you, Christopher Pike. But.
Especially, a lot of people, like we said, in horror fiction, maybe you're not looking for science fiction. Yeah. And I mean, obviously these books are all standalone, so you can just pass this one up on the half-price bookshelf. Yeah. Because, I mean, I'm glad that this is over.
Yeah. Well, it's only taken us,
people, it took me a month. The book is 289 pages long. I am 31 years old and I'm a high school graduate. Like, I should have been able
and a
to get through this. And a college graduate. I should have been able to get through this in like 2 days. Yeah. No, it took me all month because every time I looked at it, I just went, ugh.
I know.
Like, it's bad when you get 5 pages in and you just put it down and go, this is going to suck.
Yeah. Yeah. I just kept drinking. Which helped, but still.
I mean, if I drank for every time I got annoyed with that book, I'd be in the hospital.
Yeah, I mean, it was not, But I think the other thing that's important to mention is that as a job, I read a lot of things in general, and about 50% of them are questionable in terms of things like plot and character development. So I think my tolerance level is slightly, I'm just better at getting through crap. Because I read a lot of crap. I read a lot of good stuff too. People of the world, your future is not in poor hands. But I also read a lot of stuff that's awful. Lots of Twilight fan fiction, ladies and gentlemen. So
oh my God.
The point being that, like, I actually sometimes wonder if at some point I'm ever gonna read like a Christopher Pike fanfic, because I'd be like, now that's awesome. But then,
oh my god, we should do a segment.
We should
do an episode about.
Oh, we should. I'm gonna write that down. Shit, that's good. But I bet there's some like awesome fanfic about Christopher Pike.
I bet there is, because you know what? A lot of people who write fan fiction are actually really good writers.
Yeah, they're awesome.
And they're just using fanfic as their outlet.
Oh, yeah.
And if I would love to see Weekend told from the perspective of Bert.
Oh my god. People,
I want it.
Podcast world, make it happen. Do it.
Seriously. Like, if there's anyone out there listening.
I know, right? Because
I would be willing to commission this from you. I mean, I can't give you much.
Right.
I can give you a shout out on the podcast and maybe like a PayPal payment of $50.
Right.
But
right. You would have our never ending gratitude.
Seriously.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we should definitely.
Yeah.
I'm sure it exists.
Yeah.
I mean, there's WWE fan fiction.
Oh my god, there's fan fiction for everything in the universe. And some of it is quite good. I mean, one of my students wrote a piece of Newsies fanfic that was adorable and very well written. And I was like, go you, darling. So, I mean...
Was it homoerotic?
What was it called?
No, was it homoerotic was what I asked.
Oh, I thought you asked me what it was called.
We can edit this part out.
No, you don't have to edit it out. It's hilarious. Was it? No, it wasn't. But some of the Twilight stuff, definitely.
Dude.
And Harry Potter, too.
Oh, God, don't even get me started on what they do to the characters in Harry Potter fan fiction.
But, I mean, whatevs. The point is, if someone wants to write some Christopher Pike fan fiction, hell, I'm sure someone has. We should. Okay, I wrote it down in my notes, folks, which means it's
yeah, we're gonna do some investigating and we'll get back to y'all. But since we're not doing an angst alert, because there really isn't any angst
except our own
to alert you of, except our own. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know what I'm gonna put in the show notes aside from maybe some scholarly articles about space travel, since apparently.
Maybe you should. You know what you should do? You should just put a big picture of Saturn.
Oh my god.
Or just a giant picture of Jupiter with like an arrow pointing to it, being like,
you can't go here.
Yeah, that's what you should do. You could do
contrary to what books will tell you, you cannot go here.
Actually, if you really wanted to do this, and this is a little too much information, although it would be hilarious, you could do it like Jim Pike style and do it in paint.
Oh god, no, MS Paint. Yes.
And then just...
You know what? Ask and ye shall receive.
Draw a giant arrow being like, no.
You cannot go to here.
No. No, period.
But seriously,
yeah, it wasn't.
It's not Christopher Pike's fault, really.
Not.
He tried to do too much,
he did,
and
we still
it just didn't
him.
really work out in his favor. And we still love him, and we're still looking very much forward to proceeding through these books. I just received 3 more. The covers. Oh my god, I love.
I know.
I want to get these covers wallpapered. Like on my life.
Also, last time we talked about this, but I would like to just throw this out to the internet too, and just the world. If anyone has or knows how to get their hands on the Lightning paperbacks that have like the awesome crazy covers,
which I think may be published in the UK. Did we ever figure that out?
Well, those seem to be the ones that I found online were all located in England, but this is problematic because of course the shipping costs more than the book is worth. But I feel like this is
$3 book, $15 shipping.
Right. It's like right. I'm like, no, dude.
God damn it.
Exactly. And I mean, I have some connections in the UK, but it's not going to help me with the shipping. So if anyone knows how to procure those stateside, I'd love some. Because
let us know.
They're just
because
awesome.
The covers are just phenomenal.
Although,
I was really disappointed there was not a Lightning paperbacks version, or at least one that
I know
was on Goodreads or was searchable for this, because the first thing I thought of when I finished this was I cannot wait to see what the covers are. And they were woefully limited in their variety.
And there's not even any drippy font. It's lame.
No drippy font. Well, drippy font doesn't really fit with the science fiction MO though. And also this wasn't a horror book, so it doesn't really fit.
I'm just projecting my disappointment upon Anyway.
There was a lot of disappointment.
So should we tease the next one? Because we're like 4 minutes.
I mean, you can. I have not read any of these.
Okay.
So this is all, I don't even know. What's the next one again?
The next
Last
one
Act?
is called Last Act. And I have great, great fondness for this book, everyone. So I really love the female character. And the whole premise of it is kind of, and this is not giving anything away, it's a classic kind of whodunit, and I flippin' love that because nobody likes a crime procedural, the more British the better, than Brie Pike. I'm on board. I got that from our mother.
Except maybe our mother.
Yeah. And so I really like, this is not British, but it has the full disclaimer, but it's fun. It's fun. And the other thing is it brings us back to all the things we love about Pike books. It brings us back into the worlds that we were introduced to. Yeah.
Deception.
Right.
Angst.
Lots of backstabbiness.
Treachery, deception, and angst.
Lots of, I
want to see some teenagers upset about shit they have no control
over.
Oh,
there's lots of that. And there's also lots of other stuff we've talked about. Class issues, lots of stuff. And excellent. Lots of also some interesting things about theater, because it's all about a theatrical production that goes away.
Oh my.
Yeah, it's real good.
Well, that's a teaser if I've ever heard
I mean,
one.
I do what I can. So
Well, that pretty much wraps it up for us. It's a shorter episode this time, folks, because we just could not really find anything to discuss about this book that was worth talking about. I know usually our episodes run about an hour and a half, and we just couldn't find an hour and a half's worth of material.
Nope.
But next time, stay tuned for episode 4.
Yes.
And I'm sure we'll be able to, I'm sure I'll once again have to edit down 4 hours of audio.
Yeah.
Which is the best part of this whole thing.
It's true.
Is sitting at the computer and re-listening to our 4-hour conversation. And then picking out the parts that are relevant.
Yeah, there's a metaphor for life in there somewhere. Don't forget to rate and review, folks, too.
Yes, rate, review, like us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. I don't know. We've got social networking. Come find us. Mm-hmm. But yeah, until next time. We will see you then.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening, and be sure to join us next time.